Last Saturday, my son Michael got married to the woman he had an affair with, and instead of attending his wedding, I spent the evening with his ex-wife Sarah, helping her get through what she called the worst day of her life. Michael is furious with me and has cut off contact, saying I chose his ex-wife over my own son and ruined his wedding day. But I honestly believe that Sarah, who was devastated by Michael's betrayal and lost everything in their divorce, deserved my support more than celebrating a marriage that was built on lies and cheating. I'm 58M and my wife Linda is 56F. Our son Michael is 32M and was married to Sarah, 30F, for 7 years before their divorce was finalized 18 months ago. They have 2 kids together, Emma, who's 9, and Jake, who's 6. Michael is now married to Brittany, who's 26F and was his co-worker when their affair started 3 years ago. Sarah has been part of our family since Michael brought her home during college 10 years ago. She's always been the daughter Linda, and I never had thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in being part of our family. Sarah remembered everyone's birthdays, organized family gatherings, and was the one who suggested we start doing annual family vacations together. When Emma and Jake were born, Sarah was an amazing mother and always made sure the kids had strong relationships with their grandparents. She'd bring them over every weekend, send us photos and videos throughout the week, and never made us feel like we were imposing when we wanted to spend time with them. Sarah also took care of Linda's mother during her final months with cancer 4 years ago. She'd drive over after work to help with medications, cleaning, and just keeping her company. When my mother-in-law died, Sarah was the one who organized the memorial service and made sure all the family details were handled. Linda and I both felt like Sarah was more devoted to our family than some of our actual children. 3 years ago, Michael started a new job at a marketing firm and began working closely with Brittany. At first, he'd mention her occasionally as a colleague, but over time it became clear that they were spending a lot of time together outside of work. Michael would stay late for projects, go to work events on weekends, and started being secretive about his phone. Sarah came to us about the affair before she confronted Michael. She found hotel receipts, seen text messages, and finally hired a private investigator who confirmed that Michael and Brittany were having a full relationship. Sarah was devastated and asked us what she should do since she still loved Michael and wanted to save their marriage for the kids' sake. Linda and I encouraged Sarah to try marriage counseling and suggested that Michael might just be going through a midlife crisis that could be worked through. We had no idea how deep his relationship with Brittany had become or how little interest he had in saving his marriage. When Sarah confronted Michael with the evidence, he didn't apologize or ask for forgiveness. Instead, he said he'd fallen in love with Brittany and wanted a divorce. He told Sarah that their marriage had been comfortable but not passionate, and that Brittany made him feel alive in ways Sarah never had. Michael moved out immediately and in with Brittany. He showed no remorse about the affair and acted like Sarah was being unreasonable for being hurt and angry. When Sarah begged him to consider counseling, or at least waiting before making such a big decision, Michael said he'd already made up his mind and that prolonging things would just make it harder for everyone. The divorce process was brutal for Sarah. Michael hired an aggressive lawyer and fought her on everything: custody, alimony, property division, and even personal belongings. He seemed determined to punish Sarah for not just accepting the divorce quietly and moving on. During this time, Michael brought Brittany to family events and expected everyone to welcome her like nothing had happened. He'd get angry when Linda and I were polite but distant with Brittany, and he accused us of taking sides instead of supporting his happiness. But how could we not take sides? Sarah was crying in our kitchen every week, struggling to pay her bills because Michael was hiding assets and trying to explain to Emma and Jake why Daddy was living with another woman. Meanwhile, Michael and Brittany were posting vacation photos on social media and acting like they were living their best life. The worst part was watching how Michael's behavior affected the kids. Emma started having anxiety attacks and would cry whenever it was time to go to Michael's apartment. Jake began wetting the bed again and would ask Sarah when Daddy was coming home. Both kids were confused about why Brittany was around and why their parents couldn't live together anymore. Michael seemed oblivious to how his choices were affecting Emma and Jake. He'd bring Brittany to their school events, introduced her as their new mom, and got frustrated when the kids weren't excited about spending time with her. When Sarah asked him to slow down the integration process, Michael accused her of trying to turn the kids against Brittany. 18 months ago, the divorce was finalized. Sarah got primary custody of the kids, but Michael got the house and most of their savings because he'd hidden money in accounts that Sarah's lawyer couldn't find. Sarah had to move into a small apartment and take a second job to make ends meet. Throughout this whole process, Linda and I tried to maintain relationships with both Michael and Sarah, but it became increasingly difficult. Michael expected us to embrace Brittany and celebrate their relationship, while Sarah needed emotional support to get through the worst period of her life. We continued having Emma and Jake over every weekend, which meant seeing Sarah regularly for pickups and drop-offs. We could see how much she was struggling financially and emotionally, but she never complained or asked for help. She just focused on making sure the kids were happy and maintaining their routines. 6 months ago, Michael announced that he and Brittany were engaged. He seemed surprised when Linda and I weren't enthusiastic about the news. When we said we needed time to process everything, Michael accused us of holding grudges and said we needed to accept that he'd moved on. Michael also announced that he wanted Emma and Jake to be in the wedding as ring bearer and flower girl. When Sarah heard about this, she was devastated. She felt like Michael was using their children to legitimize a marriage that had destroyed their family, and she was afraid the kids would be confused about what the wedding meant. Sarah called me crying, asking if I thought she was being unreasonable for not wanting the kids in the wedding. I told her that her feelings were completely valid and that Michael should have discussed this with her before making plans. When I suggested to Michael that he might want to reconsider including the kids, he accused me of letting Sarah manipulate me. 4 months ago, we received a formal wedding invitation to Michael and Brittany's wedding. Linda and I looked at it for a long time without saying anything. The idea of celebrating a marriage that had caused so much pain to Sarah and the kids felt wrong, but Michael was still our son. When we didn't RSVP immediately, Michael called and asked if we were planning to attend. I told him honestly that we were struggling with the situation and needed more time to decide. Michael got angry and said that if we couldn't support his happiness, maybe we shouldn't be part of his life at all. That conversation made me realize that Michael had no understanding of how his choices had affected our family. He seemed to think that everyone should just forget about Sarah and the kids' struggles and celebrate his new beginning with Brittany. 2 months ago, Linda and I made the decision not to attend the wedding. We sent Michael a letter explaining that while we loved him, we couldn't in good conscience celebrate a marriage that had caused so much pain to people we cared about. We said that we hoped he'd be happy, but that we needed to support Sarah and the kids during this difficult time. Michael's response was immediate and furious. He called us both and screamed about how we were choosing an ex-daughter-in-law over our own son. He said that Sarah had manipulated us against him and that we were being vindictive and cruel. Michael said that if we didn't come to his wedding, he'd consider it a permanent rejection of him and his new wife. Linda and I talked about it for weeks. Part of us felt guilty about missing our son's wedding, but we couldn't shake the feeling that attending would be a betrayal of Sarah and everything she'd been through. We also worried about what message it would send to Emma and Jake if we celebrated the marriage that had torn their family apart. Last Saturday was the wedding day. Linda and I had made plans to take Sarah out to dinner and then back to our house for a quiet evening. We thought it would be better for her to have support and distraction rather than sitting alone in her apartment thinking about Michael and Brittany's wedding. Sarah was grateful for the company, but was clearly struggling. She kept talking about how this should have been their 10th wedding anniversary instead of the day Michael married someone else. She said she felt like she was mourning not just her marriage, but the future she'd thought they were building together. We had a nice dinner and then went back to our house to watch movies. Sarah fell asleep on our couch around 10 p.m., and Linda covered her with a blanket. Seeing her there reminded us of all the family nights we'd had when she was still our daughter-in-law, and it felt right to be taking care of her during such a painful time. The next morning, Michael started calling and texting both Linda and me. He said that our absence from his wedding had been noticed by everyone and that we'd embarrassed him and Brittany. He said that Brittany's family was asking questions about why his parents weren't there and that we'd made their wedding day about our disapproval instead of their happiness. Michael also said that several family members had asked where we were, and when they found out we'd chosen to spend the evening with Sarah instead, they were shocked. He said that we'd made it clear to everyone that we valued his ex-wife more than our own son. When I tried to explain that we weren't choosing Sarah over him, but rather supporting someone who needed us during a difficult time, Michael said that was exactly what choosing her over him meant. He said that the wedding was his fresh start, and by refusing to be there, we made it clear that we wanted him to stay trapped in guilt about his past. Michael has now blocked both Linda and me on social media and won't answer our calls. He sent one final text saying that since we'd made our choice, he didn't want us in his life anymore if we couldn't respect his marriage and his wife. The kids are confused about why they can't talk to Grandma and Grandpa when they're at Daddy's house. Emma asked Sarah why we didn't go to the wedding, and Sarah told her that sometimes adults have complicated feelings that are hard to explain. Some of our extended family members think we made the right choice and that Michael needed to understand that actions have consequences. But others think we went too far and that missing your child's wedding is something you can't take back. Linda has been second-guessing our decision and worrying that we've permanently damaged our relationship with Michael. She's also concerned about how this will affect our relationship with Emma and Jake if Michael decides to limit our access to them. I still believe we did the right thing. Sarah was there for our family when we needed her, and she deserved our support when she needed us. Michael chose to build his happiness on the destruction of Sarah's life, and I couldn't bring myself to celebrate that. Update 2 weeks later. Michael followed through on his threat to cut us off. He's blocked our phone numbers and has told Sarah that Emma and Jake can't come to our house for their usual weekend visits anymore. Sarah is heartbroken because she knows how much the kids love spending time with us. But Michael has made it clear that this is part of the consequences for our choice. Sarah tried to advocate for us, telling Michael that punishing the kids because he's angry with US isn't fair. But Michael said that he needs to protect his new family from people who are actively working against his marriage. He said that as long as we're supporting Sarah, we're undermining his relationship with Brittany. Emma has been asking why she can't see Grandma and Grandpa anymore, and Jake keeps asking when we're coming to pick them up for their sleepover. Sarah has been trying to explain in age-appropriate terms, but it's clearly confusing and upsetting for both kids. Linda has been devastated about losing contact with the grandchildren. She's been crying every day and keeps saying that maybe we should have just gone to the wedding and kept our opinions to ourselves. She's worried that we'll miss important milestones in Emma and Jake's lives and that they'll eventually forget about us. I've been struggling with doubt too, but then I think about how destroyed Sarah was that night and how much her support meant to her. I also keep thinking about what message we would have sent to Emma and Jake if we'd celebrated the marriage that broke up their family. Some family members have been reaching out to try to mediate between us and Michael. His aunt called to say that while she understands our position, she thinks we should apologize and try to rebuild the relationship for the kids' sake. She said that Michael is hurt and feeling rejected, and that time isn't going to make this better. But I'm not sure what we'd be apologizing for. We didn't ruin his wedding. We just didn't attend it. We haven't tried to turn anyone against him or Brittany. We simply supported someone who needed us during a difficult time. Sarah has been feeling guilty about the situation and has offered to talk to Michael about reducing contact with us so that we can rebuild our relationship with him. But that feels wrong too, punishing Sarah for our choice when she didn't ask us not to attend the wedding. Update 1 month later. The situation has gotten more complicated. Michael's new mother-in-law apparently got involved and has been pushing Brittany to demand that Michael cut off anyone who doesn't fully accept their marriage. According to Michael's brother Tom, Brittany's mother has been saying that we're toxic and that Michael needs to choose between his new family and people who disrespect his wife. Tom also told us that Michael and Brittany have been arguing about the situation. Brittany apparently wants Michael to give us an ultimatum, apologize publicly, and commit to treating her as a full member of the family, or lose contact permanently. Michael seems torn between wanting to repair our relationship and keeping peace with his new wife. Meanwhile, Sarah has been dealing with Emma's increasing anxiety about the family situation. Emma is old enough to understand that there's conflict between Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa, and she's been having trouble sleeping and acting out at school. The school counselor suggested that the ongoing family drama is affecting Emma's sense of security. Jake has been asking Sarah when we're coming back and keeps drawing pictures of our family that include Linda and me. Sarah showed me one where he drew all of us holding hands with a big heart around us, and it broke my heart to think about how confused he must be. Linda finally decided to write Michael a letter apologizing for missing his wedding and asking if we could find a way to move forward for the kids' sake. She said she was willing to meet with him and Brittany to discuss how we could all coexist as a family. Michael's response was brief and cold. He said that an apology wasn't enough and that we needed to prove our commitment to accepting Brittany by doing things like hosting them for holidays, including Brittany in family photos, and publicly acknowledging her as part of the family. He said that until we showed that level of acceptance, he couldn't trust us around his children. I'm torn between wanting to see Emma and Jake and feeling like Michael is asking us to betray our values. How can we pretend to celebrate a marriage that we watched destroy Sarah's life? How can we include Brittany in family traditions that Sarah helped create? Sarah has been encouraging us to do whatever it takes to maintain a relationship with the kids. She said that Emma and Jake need their grandparents and that she doesn't want her situation to cost them that relationship. But it feels wrong to abandon her after everything she's been through. Update from months later. Linda and I decided to reach out to Michael again and try to find some middle ground. We agreed to meet with him and Brittany at a restaurant to discuss how we could move forward as a family. The meeting was tense and uncomfortable. Brittany did most of the talking and laid out very specific expectations for how we needed to behave if we wanted to be part of their lives. She said that we needed to stop having any contact with Sarah, include her in all family events, and never mention the circumstances of how she and Michael got together. Brittany also said that we needed to acknowledge that she was Emma and Jake's stepmother and support her role in parenting them. She wanted us to refer to her as part of our family in front of the kids and stop talking about how things used to be when Sarah was married to Michael. When I asked if we could maintain some relationship with Sarah for the kids' sake, since she's their mother, Brittany said that was unacceptable. She said that Sarah was part of Michael's past and that continuing to support her was disrespectful to their marriage. Michael sat quietly through most of this and seemed uncomfortable with some of Brittany's demands, but he didn't contradict her. When I asked him directly what he wanted, he said that he needed us to show Brittany the same love and acceptance we'd shown Sarah, and that meant cutting ties with his ex-wife completely. I told him that we couldn't agree to cut Sarah out of our lives, especially when she was the mother of our grandchildren and had been part of our family for 10 years. I said that we were willing to be polite and inclusive with Brittany, but that we couldn't pretend the past didn't happen. The meeting ended with Brittany saying that our attitude proved we weren't ready to accept their marriage, and that they needed to protect their family from negative influences. Michael said he was disappointed but not surprised, and that the kids would be fine without grandparents who couldn't move forward. Since then, we've had no contact with Michael, Brittany, or the kids. We still see Sarah regularly, and she updates us on how Emma and Jake are doing. She says Emma has been asking about us less frequently, which breaks our hearts, but is probably healthy for her. Sarah also told us that Michael and Brittany are planning to move to another state for Brittany's job. She's worried about how this will affect her custody arrangement and is considering trying to block the move through the courts. If they do move, it's unlikely we'll see the kids at all. I still don't regret our choice to support Sarah instead of attending the wedding, but I'm heartbroken about losing our relationship with Emma and Jake. Linda has been struggling with depression and keeps looking at old photos of the kids. Update: 8 months later, Michael and Brittany moved to Arizona 3 months ago. Sarah tried to fight the move in court, but Michael's lawyer argued that Brittany's job opportunity was too good to pass up and that the kids would benefit from a fresh start away from family drama. Sarah was devastated, but ultimately couldn't afford to keep fighting. She now gets the kids for 6 weeks in the summer and alternating holidays, which means we rarely see them. The last time Emma and Jake were here, they seemed different, more reserved, and less comfortable with us. Emma asked why we never visit them in Arizona, and we had to explain that Daddy doesn't want us to come. She seemed to accept this, but didn't ask any follow-up questions, which suggests she's learned not to talk about family conflicts. Jake has adapted better to the situation and was excited to tell us about his new school and friends. But he also mentioned that Mommy Brittany helps him with homework and that Daddy says they're going to be a real family now. Hearing him refer to Brittany as a mother figure was painful, but we tried not to react. Sarah has been seeing a therapist to deal with the grief of losing daily access to her children. She's also considering moving to Arizona to be closer to them, even though it would mean starting over professionally. She asked what Linda and I thought about the idea, and we encouraged her to do whatever felt right for her and the kids. Michael sent Linda a birthday card this year with a brief note saying he hoped she was well. There was no return address and no invitation to communicate further, but it was the first contact we'd had in months. Linda cried when she got it because it felt like a small sign that he still cares about us. We've been going to counseling too, trying to process the grief of losing our son and grandchildren. Our therapist has helped us understand that we made the best decision we could with the information we had, but that doesn't make the consequences any easier to live with. Some days, I wonder if we should have just gone to the wedding and kept our feelings to ourselves. Other days, I remember how broken Sarah was that night and feel confident that we did the right thing. The hardest part is knowing that there's no way to undo our choice and see how things might have been different. Final update. 1.5 years later, Sarah ended up moving to Arizona 8 months ago to be closer to Emma and Jake. She found a job at a hospital there and has been rebuilding her relationship with the kids now that she can see them more regularly. We miss having Sarah nearby, but we've been visiting her in Arizona every few months and staying in touch through video calls. It's been good to see her finding some peace and stability after everything she went through. During our last visit, we ran into Michael at Jake's soccer game. It was the first time we'd seen him in over a year, and the encounter was awkward but not hostile. He looked surprised to see us there, and we exchanged polite small talk about the kids without mentioning anything about our family situation. Emma and Jake seemed happy to see us, but also confused about why we don't all sit together like other families. Emma asked Sarah later why Grandma and Grandpa don't talk to Daddy anymore, and Sarah told her that sometimes adults have disagreements that are hard to fix. After the game, Michael approached Linda and said that he missed us and that he thought about us often. He said that he understood why we'd made the choice we did, even though it had hurt him. Linda started crying and told him that we missed him and the kids every day. Michael said that Brittany was still uncomfortable with the idea of us being part of their lives, but that he was working on helping her understand that family relationships are complicated. He said that maybe eventually we could find a way to have some kind of relationship that worked for everyone. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was the most hopeful conversation we'd had in over a year. Linda has been cautiously optimistic that maybe time and distance have helped Michael gain some perspective on what happened. We're trying not to get our hopes up too much, but it felt good to hear that Michael still thinks about us and that he's starting to understand our position. Sarah has been encouraging us to be patient and let Michael come to his own conclusions about what kind of relationship he wants with us. I still believe we made the right choice in supporting Sarah when she needed us most. The cost has been higher than I ever imagined, but seeing her rebuild her life and maintain her relationship with Emma and Jake has reinforced that our support was necessary and worthwhile. Whether we'll ever have a real relationship with Michael again remains to be seen, but at least now there's a possibility that the door isn't permanently closed. Sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that the consequences might be painful, even if they're ultimately worth it.